Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I am going to let our technology catch up for a couple minutes, and I will welcome everybody again in just a few minutes as we start seeing more people join. So good morning to those of you that are here already. I should have some catchy music or some slide or something that goes on, and that might make it better. Roy, why don't we go ahead and put on the first slide just as we transition and we start seeing people log in. Good morning from Houston. Good morning. Good morning. We're going to start in just a couple minutes, y'all, and that way it'll give folks a chance to log in and say hello, good morning, good morning. Oh, I see Craig Campbell is on YouTube. It is always interesting to see how people are logging in to watch our live broadcasts. And right now we have YouTube and Facebook, and it's almost an exact tie. So anyway, it's good to see everybody. We're going to start in just a couple minutes, and we'll have a good conversation about what's going on with Windfall Elimination Provision and the government pension offset. Okay. All right. Oh, well, there's Chris. Chris and I were emailing last night, so good stuff. Linda, how are you? It's good to see y'all. All right, Roy, why don't we click back on me and we can get going. So good morning, everybody. My name is Tim Lee. I'm the Executive Director for the Texas Retired Teachers Association. And I wanted to say Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, season's greetings to everyone who is tuning in. It is a beautiful morning. And I am coming to you this morning live from Houston, Texas. I am staying at a Hilton Garden Inn in Houston, and the background this morning is just happened to be set up already in the room that I'm using. And so I want to thank the good folks here at the Hilton Garden Inn at the medical center. It's a great facility and a wonderful staff. If any of you are traveling through the Houston area and are trying to think of someplace to go, they've been very kind to me. So I'm very appreciative to them, and what an amazing background. And it's real. If I were to show you around, you would see they had it set up for other purposes. So no green screen or anything today. All right. Well, let's get started. So as you all know, today I wanted to talk about our Windfall Elimination Provision repeal and fix efforts, as well as our GPO repeal and fix efforts. And this topic is near and dear to so many of our members' hearts. And I think it's important for us to kind of end the calendar year and be ready to start 2022 with a really good head start on what we needed to get done. I'm going to explain kind of the lay of the land as it is right now in Congress with these bills. And I want to go ahead and start by saying, while you're here, thank you for tuning into this broadcast. But I want to go ahead and mention that at the beginning of 2022, January 7th, I believe, we are going to have another live presentation on the pending supplemental check. So if you are currently a TRTA member and you've been talking to other fellow retirees about joining this organization and why does it matter, I would encourage you to ask them to tune in on January 7th for our live broadcast about the supplemental check that is pending and will be coming in January of 22. So quick little plug for our future broadcasts as we get started. So, all right, y'all, let's start talking about the Windfall Elimination Provision and government pension offset. And I'm going to try to condense a lot of information in the shortest amount of time possible, because I know that you have other things going on and I don't want to take your entire day. So let's begin by saying, well, what are the Windfall Elimination Provision and the government pension offset? Obviously, these are Social Security provisions that are in place by federal law that reduce or eliminate a public pensioner's Social Security benefits depending on where they may receive those benefits. So the Windfall Elimination Provision affects a person's personally owned or earned Social Security benefit. So if you're an educator, a firefighter, a police officer, a public servant of some kind who paid into a government pension, but also paid into the Social Security system in a non-coordinated way. So you had a second job in the private sector and you were earning your own Social Security income. The federal government uses a formula that was designed in the early 1980s to reduce but not eliminate your Social Security benefits. And I'm going to talk a great deal about that item as we go on this morning. The government pension offset is even more devastating provision that eliminates, for most people, it can reduce, but for most people, it's an elimination of the auxiliary or spousal benefit, which they may be entitled to based on their spouse's work history. And that particular measure is very devastating, as many people may not know or hear about it until they try to claim their spouse's spousal benefit. Many times these are widows or widowers who are being impacted, and they find out they cannot receive any of their spouse's Social Security benefit, which they had been counting on to help keep their retirement livelihood secure. So it does have devastating impacts on our members and public servants around the country. So let's talk about the big picture when it comes to the Windfall Elimination Provision. And essentially, I've got 2 or 3 points that I want to cover about the WEP and why it's first and what's going on and what you all need to do and what we are doing. And then also conversation about the WEP or about the GPO. So the way that I've structured this in my head is that the Windfall Elimination Provision is unfair, it's unnecessary, and it's time for it to go. And I'm going to explain briefly why each of these components should matter to us, and it's as a way to help articulate the message to the congressional members when you're talking to them and your fellow retirees. So let's start off with why this provision is unfair. By far, the provision is unfair because of an arbitrary formula that was created to reduce a person's personally earned Social Security benefit. That arbitrary formula is a one-size-fits-all and does not take into account a person's personally earned or their personal contributions to the Social Security Trust Fund throughout their working career. The Congress in the early 1980s will have argued that they did not have a way to calculate each person's individual Social Security benefits because they did not have the records of Social Security contributions for public or private workers prior to 1977. So if you had work history prior to that, the federal government's records, as reported back to us, are a bit sketchy. And so they wanted to come up with some way to offset a person's Social Security benefit while they also have a public pension. And so they came up with this WEP formula. And the formula itself, in its arbitrary one-size-fits-all nature, is simply unfair. It is unnecessary. Is my second point. It's unnecessary because we know today that there is a way to calculate everybody's Social Security benefits on an individual basis. Congress and the Social Security Administration know that we have the ability, because we now have complete work history for all American workers who are paying Social Security as of January 1st, 1977 and on. And so the federal government, who passes the rules on to the Social Security Administration on how to calculate these benefits, has been told that we can now use a formula to calculate Social Security benefits based on actual contributions. And so by the mere fact that the circumstances that did not exist in the 1980s has already gone, and we don't have to live by that same standard anymore. We have the records, we have the technology, we have all of the ability to calculate a person's individual Social Security amounts. The windfall elimination provision as it exists today is absolutely unnecessary. And Congress and their inaction on the issue in many ways, based on what our members have said back to me, feels like theft of people's benefits, because they know there is a better way. They can do something different because they choose not to. Our people, our members, and people around the country who are making contributions to the Social Security system and to a government pension, they know their benefits could be higher. And because we're not using actual contributions for those folks, our members report back to us, they feel like the federal government is allowing their benefits to be stolen away from them. And it is creating a really negative situation for our current retirees, our future retirees, and our future public servants because of this unnecessary, arbitrary, unfair provision. And the third point that I wanted to make is it's simply time for the WEP to go. It's been time, long time, for the WEP, the Windfall Elimination Provision, to go away. We've known for a number of years now that the Social Security Administration has the ability to implement a new strategy to ensure the integrity of the Social Security Administration, and that people will receive their Social Security benefits based on what they pay in actual contributions, and not on an arbitrary formula. And I think that our members, TRTA members, have always said that they only want what is fair. I think by and large, we strive towards fairness for our benefit structure. And we are not trying to give our folks any more, certainly not trying to give them any less than what they deserve based on contributions. And that is what we are working towards. So we know there is a better way. And a lot of people have articulated that better way is something they support. So then the question is, well, why is nothing getting done? And we also know there are some other bills out there that do various things. And we've seen a lot of bills get filed over time. And I wanted to spend some time today talking about what bills are the most known by our membership, by our friends and colleagues around the country, and also by our congressional members working for the Texas congressional delegation, as well as folks from around the country. So let's go to an introduction of what these bills are. And Roy, who is our producer, is also helping me. And he is going to put up on the screen the first bill that many people have heard about. This is H.R. 82, the Social Security Fairness Act of 2021. Many folks have heard about this bill. I have been working on this issue since 1996. This is the bill that I am typically the most familiar with. It has been sponsored by various folks throughout the last 20 years. But this current bill is sponsored by Representative Rodney Davis of Illinois. This bill repeals both the WEP and the GPO. And as you see in this second bullet point, it does not include a method to pay for the changes. Of course, TRTA and all of our partners support the complete repeal of the existing WEP and the GPO, but we have focused most of our efforts on WEP reform, which has a much greater likelihood of passing and helping our members now. I want to clarify something, and Roy, you can probably come back to me now, and we may go back to this slide in just a second. But the big issue here is the existing WEP and GPO are unfair. They're, as I said, they're unnecessary, they are unfair, and it's time for them to go. There's a better way. What Congress may have been attempting to do in the late 1970s and 1980s may have had some merit in that how are Social Security benefits calculated. We have talked about this in other Facebook Live presentations, and I'm not going to get into that in depth today. Maybe we can link to some of those videos when we post this one. But the big issue is that we want the Social Security calculations for our public servants to be fair. And so in order to do that, you have to get rid of all of the unfair stuff. And so you get rid of the existing WEP and the GPO, and we agree to that. And so this bill, though, is sort of it's the thing that in large part, I think congressional members have sort of gone to as saying, hey, I support full repeal. And it may afford those congressional members an opportunity to go back to their constituents and say, I am on board for this. I've signed on to HR 82. And if you'll notice in the slide, Roy, let's click on that slide again real quick. Item number 2, it does not include a method to pay for the changes. This phrase is the biggest sticking point that we have on advancing HR 82. And I don't know that anyone who is sponsoring or supporting this bill would argue against the idea that when you're looking for a pay for in Congress and you don't have one, it creates a tremendous problem for how the bill moves ahead. And so I want to explain that just for a second. Roy, you can come back to me. So there are a lot of groups that are working on ensuring the long-term integrity of our Social Security Trust Fund. And there are too many for me to even name. Of course, we know big names like AARP, which TRTA has a strong working partnership with, and groups that are in trying to ensure that our Social Security Trust Fund is not going to be demonstrably worse off by passing other reform measures for the Social Security system. Well, they get very concerned about a bill that talks about doing something major like complete repeal of the GPO and WEP without any money to go back into the trust fund to pay for the ongoing costs of the Social Security Administration. Now, we can all have a good conversation about whether or not the GPO and the WEP should have ever been implemented. And there's certainly merit for having that discussion. But right now, Congress looks for ways to ensure that the Social Security Trust Fund will be there for all workers who are paying into it in perpetuity. And we know that there is tremendous pressure right now on the Social Security Administration and discussions about cuts to the Social Security recipients' checks because of the future instability of the plan. And so while there are a lot of people signing up for this bill, HR 82, there is some concern that we as advocates have that the signing up on this particular bill without solving some of the other concerns that other stakeholder groups are going to have, it makes the path forward on HR 82 incredibly difficult. And so as many people who want can sign up on it, but if it doesn't have a path forward because you have stakeholders and other congressional members and the United States Senate all saying, this is going to make the system worse off, and how will you fix that? Without that answer, that bill has a hard time moving ahead. Do we want to continue to support these concepts? Of course. But I've been doing this for a long time, more than 2 decades, and I have seen this bill come up in various forms, and it has not gotten very far in Congress. And TRTA wants to improve our members' livelihood by looking for ways that we can advance concepts instead of just putting bills out there in front of people and every year saying we're for this and then having to come back after every congressional cycle and say, well, nothing happened. And I think that there are some well-intentioned congressional members who are pushing for this, and we certainly welcome all of their efforts. At the same time, we know that without fixing the pay-for problem, that's having a hard time moving ahead. And I think it still has a hard time, even with all of the co-sponsors that are on it, to move ahead. So let's take a look at some of the other bills that are out there then, because there are others. So the current sort of favored bill is a bill called HR 2337, the Public Servants Protection and Fairness Act. This is authored by TRTA's friend, Representative Richie Neal from Massachusetts. one of our major supporters and colleagues and association friends, Massachusetts Retirees, our longtime working partnership with Richie Neal. And we really appreciate our Mass Retirees friends and partners who are working with us on this effort. Mr. Neal is the current chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in Congress. And Richie, Chairman Neal, I should say, is, as chairman, has the ability to help move certain bills faster than others. This being his bill, we would like to think that he could maneuver this in a way that it could get a hearing and potentially advance sooner than later. The bill does have 184 co-sponsors. It replaces the WEP with a proportional formula, as well as providing retirees with current retirees who are affected by the WEP with an extra $150 a month. And that component is one of the differences in a bill that we're going to talk about next. The bill does include a benefit guarantee that no benefit reduction may result from the changes. So I'm going to stay on this slide and explain point 4, because it's one of the areas where we have some need for bipartisan effort in trying to come up with a workable solution. So some folks who are currently affected by the WEP are affected in a positive way. The existing WEP language says that it will take a look at your 30 years worth of contributions to the Social Security Administration. And if you have 120 quarters or 30 years of contributions to the Social Security system during your public service, then you will not have a WEP. The current formula for non-government workers or just private sector workers is a 35-year calculation. So what that means is that if you're in a government position paying into a public pension plan that is not coordinated with Social Security, and you are also on your own in private contributions for private employment, making contributions to the Social Security Trust Fund, if you have 30 years of contributions, you will actually come out better than if you were a private citizen, private employee making contributions not to government pension. You're going to actually have 5 years less of contributions to get your full benefit. And so, Roy, you can come back to me. So what Mr. Neal's bill is saying is that if you are able to have your public pension and also have 30 years of contributions, we want to hold you harmless from those other 5 years. In other words, we don't want to bring parity between the 35-year level of contributions and the 30-year. We want to keep this 30-year contribution in place in perpetuity. And so this has been a matter of some stickiness and probably is one of the major reasons why we have not reached some bipartisan solution on how to advance a WEP bill. Other components of this are pretty bipartisan in nature. The current WEP formula is unfair. It needs to go. That is clear. This bill also says we will implement a proportional formula, which means we will pay people back based on what they pay in. That's good news because it means that future Social Security recipients who are government workers will get a fair Social Security benefit, not one that has this arbitrary one-size-fits-all formula. And so those are good concepts. Mr. Neal's bill also says the people who are currently affected by WEP will get an extra $150 a month added back into the Social Security benefits. That will be there forever. It will, my understanding is, will be indexed to inflationary increases that Social Security recipients receive. So we know that Social Security is going to go up 5.9% January of 2022. If we had had this formula in place, you would have received that additional 5.9% on top of the 150 and so on and so on. And there are some other provisions, I think, in there that we can come back and revisit that in the future and potentially give retirees more over time. And so this measure is one that has a lot of bipartisan support, but it is stuck in committee because we have not been able to reach a bipartisan consensus on how to handle the WEP proportional formula going forward. It is costly to maintain the existing WEP language forever. And I think that's one of the things that Congress is trying to solve, and that we need to work with our folks on to bring a resolution to. If we could get there, I think that this bill could have the best chance to move forward and get people money in their pockets as quickly as possible. So let's take a look at the kind of other middle of the road solution, which is HR 5834 by Kevin Brady. Of course, Mr. Brady was the chairman of Ways and Means until a couple of years ago, when the House flipped from Republican control to Democratic control. So Mr. Brady is now the ranking member. Mr. Brady and Mr. Neal, one from Massachusetts and another one from Texas, have a very strong bipartisan working relationship. And I really have to say, for the staff members, for these folks that are watching, all of us appreciate the bipartisan nature of the work relationship between Chairman Neal and Ranking Member Brady. The big item for us to consider is that Mr. Brady is in his last term. He has focused on this issue for a long time. He has come to our TRTA conventions. He has appeared on our broadcasts. He's been a big proponent of trying to come up with a solution. And he has indicated that he is not running again for his seat in Congress. He has assured me on a number of personal conversations that we have had that he would very much like to leave by fixing the WEP and putting us on a trajectory to getting many good things to happen for WEP and GPO as we continue to work on solutions moving ahead. But his bill right now has only the 38 co-sponsors, but it was just introduced in November. It's very similar to HR 2337. The major components of it are the same, with the proportional formula and how that affects our future retirees. There is a difference on the monthly amount that retirees would receive under the Brady formula. It is $100 per month for current retirees, but it does have a surviving benefit that would carry on with spouses. That's a little bit different than the way Mr. Neal addresses his bill. I am certain that we can reach a compromise on this particular piece in a bipartisan way. And then the final bullet point, Mr. Brady and Chairman Neal are working together to bring bills together and move one bill forward as a bipartisan solution. So the big difference between 5834 and Mr. Neal's bill, and Roy, you can come back to me, is that Mr. Brady's bill does not maintain the WEP forever. And so some people who have been advocating on this issue that live in other parts of the country, they feel strongly that if the current WEP was removed, it would represent a cut to future benefits for people who have the better case scenario with the existing WEP. Our argument has been that while that is something that could be discussed for current workers, is there a solution that we can reach where we roll these rules into effect so this will not affect anyone who's currently not even paying into Social Security? And for, as an example, with our colleagues and friends around the country, we have floated the idea of saying, look, can we reach a compromise between Mr. Brady and Mr. Neal so that if you think that there's a part of this that represents a cut for future workers, it can't represent a cut for somebody who is not even making contributions. We've even gone so far as to say, let's extend the current WEP for people who are not yet firefighters or not yet police officers or not yet educated. They may be 4 or 5 years old. And so, let's exempt all people who are currently alive and just say at some point in the future, we will have a fairness approach on Social Security for all workers that is that 30-year or 35-year calculation of benefit. And so we're working on a solution. We would like to think that there is a compromise that is possible, because we believe that our members need their money today. And it seems as though to us that we are pending action in Congress trying to protect a benefit that may not affect anyone 60, 70 years from now. but we need to help retirees who are affected by the WEP today. Those folks need those dollars back in their paychecks today because the WEP is unnecessary, it is unfair, and it is affecting people today, and it needs to go away. So we want to hear all persons' concerns with this, but at the same time, we cannot rest and choose to do nothing simply because we're still trying to come up with some agreement. So our message on the Brady and Neal bill these are the most likely to succeed today. And there's good compromises in a bipartisan fashion to try to advance this. And we'd like to see something move quickly. It does not mean that our work will ever stop in trying to get a better solution. But no solution is the worst possible outcome for our existing retirees who are desperate for getting some of their earned Social Security benefits back in their check. And so let's talk about the final bill that I wanted to mention to everyone, and that is HR 5723. This is a more recent bill. It's the Social Security 2100, A Sacred Trust is its title. This is a bill by Representative Larson from Connecticut. And I want to say our deep appreciation to Chairman Larson for inviting one of our TRTA members, Mary Widmeyer, during the summer of 2021. Mary was able to give testimony to Mr. Larson's subcommittee on Social Security, and we were very grateful for our opportunity to speak for all retirees in Texas from the Retired Teachers Association. And so we're grateful for that, and we'll talk about Mr. Larson's bill. Mr. Larson's bill is a far more comprehensive overhaul of various aspects of the Social Security system. In this bill, you have, again, a full repeal of the WEP and the GPO. The difference between this and HR 82 is that it's not a standalone. It's as I said, a far more comprehensive overhaul of Social Security. And there are certain pay-fors built into this measure by implementing new cost or revenue enhancements for the Social Security Trust Fund. I think it expands the taxation on earnings over the $400,000 threshold for American workers. And there's some other things, and I don't want to misspeak because I don't have all of the notes in front of me. But the major differences between this and the HR 82 is that this is not a standalone WEP GPO repeal. It is something that's mixed into a more comprehensive overhaul of Social Security, and it does have the benefit of having a revenue enhancements to help pay for the changes that are going into this measure. Roy, you can come back to me. And so, as many of you will probably recognize, anytime that you have a more complicated bill, one that has a major overhaul of something like Social Security, new revenue enhancements that some people would say, instead of say revenue enhancements, they say new taxes, and other major changes. Whether you agree to all of that or disagree with all of that, the one thing that I think we can all agree to is that those things that I mentioned make it more complicated to move ahead. Should it move ahead? Will it move ahead? You know, these are things that we can continue to bring our congressional members together and say, hey, look, you know, there's some good things here, and there's some other things that we have questions about here. And you have the revenue enhancements, you have all the other things, and the full repeal of the GPO and the WEP. But what this means is that the complicated nature of trying to move something like this forward is it takes time. It takes probably a lot of time and a lot of potential compromise, not only in the U.S. House, but also with the U.S. Senate and the administration and all kinds of other things. And so could it be done? Should it be done? Again, I think we'll leave that question a little open-ended because time for TRTA and our membership has been expressed as one of the major concerns that we have with fixing WEP and GPO. We need something now. And many people do not know that our Texas teacher retirement system does not have any standard cost of living adjustments built into it. And our members are feeling the terrible impact of inflation eating away at our ability to buy goods and services on an everyday basis. And our state president, Leroy DeHaven, talked about that very issue with our Teacher Retirement System Board of Trustees earlier in the week. We need help now. Our members need help now. We need to make a difference for all government workers immediately. The WEP is unnecessary, it's unfair, and it's time for it to go. And just because we are working on a bipartisan solution to help us immediately does not mean in any way that we have to stop on a more comprehensive overhaul. But at the same time, if we have a strong bipartisan solution that will put money in the pockets of our retirees who need those dollars now, should we wait until the perfect is reached before we see anything for them? And I think a lot of people know the old axiom, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And so we want to move forward past some things that can actually get done and continue to work on these issues. I think personally that victory and momentum is a big part of influencing how Congress comes to resolution on items for our Social Security. And so if we can show that there is a united front and that we can get some things done, then we can see bigger victories down the road. And that is how I transition into my conversation about the government pension offset. The GPO is a more difficult issue to address. It does not mean that it should not be addressed. There are levels of things that we can do with the GPO. My worry that I've seen before, it may happen again, and that is that if you have a Texas education retiree who is receiving some portion of their spousal benefit, if and when the supplemental check is paid, the Social Security Administration may try to recalculate that already GPO'd Social Security benefit, saying that one-time payment should be viewed as a forever increase in retirees' benefits, and the Social Security Administration may reduce the Social Security benefits of people who are still receiving some of their spouse's benefit. This is the GPO. TRTA has in the past asked Congress to implement a new bill, a new measure called one and done. It's not a solution to the unfairness of the government pension offset, but it says simply that if you are a retiree currently GPO'd and you have any amount of Social Security benefit left, whatever increases you receive in your government pension cannot have any further consequence on your already GPO'd Social Security benefit. So if you live in Massachusetts or if you live in Illinois and you have anything left after you've been hit by the GPO, if your state gives you a cost of living raise or if you get a supplemental check, then those earnings cannot be used to offset your Social Security benefit in the future. And so that is it's a middle of the road approach to trying to get something done to stop the bleeding that is occurring because of the GPO, while we're also working to come up with a more comprehensive solution. Some people have argued that the way the GPO is set up today, it takes 2/3 the value of your government pension and subtracts that from your Social Security benefit, which many people, that's how they get to zero. Some people have argued that it's the simplest solution is to change that 2/3 to some variation that is significantly less. And the way that this works in the private sector, just so everybody knows, is that if you have two people who are married and you have and both of those folks paid into the private sector and they're getting their Social Security benefit, if one person precedes the other one in death, then the person who is still alive will receive either their Social Security benefit or their spouse's Social Security benefit, whichever is the greater of the two. And so Congress says that everybody in the United States has an offset of some kind. They either get their own benefit or they get their spousal benefit. They don't get both. They just get the greater of the two. And so there is that was the rationale for how Congress came up with this. There are some flaws in that and how it affects government workers. Suffice it to say, we believe there's a better way to deal with this. And there are a lot of reasons why we would want to solve this problem, because we believe it is affecting not only our current retirees in a very negative way financially, who are already suffering from increased inflation, other things that I've already talked about, but we believe it is a major deterrent from people wanting to get into the profession of education or public service. And so we know there are solutions out there. We know that the best way to get to a solution is to have Congress get really excited about wanting to help our public servants. And for them to be really excited about this, we need them to have a bipartisan, fair solution to get us moving ahead. So where do we go from here? And today was more about kind of an education. There are other bills that are being talked about. There are other efforts, but you know, the United States is full of advocates and groups, and a lot of them look a lot like TRTA. We have a lot of friends in our retired teacher network. Some of them favor one bill over another. And I'm not trying to convince anybody that any of these bills are bad. All I'm saying today with our membership is, for TRTA, we need a solution now. And waiting on the perfect bill to come around for a reform or a repeal, you know, this is the United States Congress. I think we all can agree that getting anything through is going to be a compromise of some kind. The most support that we have between the people that are really in charge of the Ways and Means Committee, as the chairman and the ranking member, you've got the two bills by Neil and Brady. And we need these guys to get together with the other members of the Ways and Means Committee and leadership in Congress and to move this thing on. Let's find a compromise. Let's get a solution. Let's be bipartisan. What I'm asking for our members to do is to continue to communicate with your congressional members. Let them know that we support both the Neil and the Brady bill, that we believe that is where the most traction exists to get something in the pockets of our retirees. As we get into 2022, TRTA is going to work on an even more aggressive approach for advocacy and focusing. In large part, our advocacy efforts are going to focus almost exclusively on getting something done with the WEP and the GPO. Presumably, the WEP will go first. So I am going to take a pause just for a second. We've had a lot of comments, and I'm going to take a quick peek at some of them just to see what folks are saying. And I would love for people to continue to post their comments and suggestions. And so, Chris, I see your comments and a lot of comments here. So she says, it sounds like Tim is most hopeful about 2337 and 5834. And Chris and I go way back. So I'm going to address that one just very quickly. The reason that I'm hopeful about that is because it is the most bipartisan of the efforts. And it's also the one that has the ability to move ahead without having a major impact on the Social Security Trust Fund in a way that the other advocacy organizations around the country would come in and start opposing these bills. On HR 82, you have a great effort in its intent, but you have a major cost factor and no revenue components and no way for that thing to really do anything other than potentially pick up a lot of objection from other stakeholders who will try to push it down, because it does have some major negative impacts on the overall trust fund, Social Security Trust Fund value. Again, whether or not we can argue about WEP and GPO and their existence and creation, and everything else, but in the here and now, where you have to vote on these things, the congressional members are saying, hey, look, that's going to make the trust fund even more wobbly, and there's no way to fix it that we see in HR 82. And so you've got half of the bill right. It deals with the subject matter, but it doesn't deal with the other part of this, which is the Social Security Trust Fund is going to become, as I said, even more potentially wobbly. And so then you've got the alternative to that on the other side of that spectrum, which is the 2100 Act by Mr. Larson. You've got a lot of overhaul. You've got a lot of things going for it, but it represents major changes, major overhaul, lots of other people that need to come together and be a part of that equation in order for it to add up and be right. You got new revenue enhancers in there, and all of that takes time to figure out. The quickest path to victory is to have Mr. Brady and Mr. Neal get us on a path of getting rid of this arbitrary WEP formula that exists today, building up some momentum, getting all of us on the same page, showing that bipartisan solutions are possible, and coming back and fixing the GPO and the WEP on a more permanent structure. But we've got to get something done. It's been over 30 years, and we've heard a lot of lip service on these things and not seen a lot of action. And our members are very anxious to see Congress actually pick up the torch and pass something that will benefit them and get rid of the arbitrary WEP formula altogether. So we're moving in that direction and want to continue to do that. And so I'm going to look at it. I just see another question here by Kara Kaplan. It says, why cannot this get done year after year? I paid the money, no one else. It belongs to me, and I and all of us should get our full money, what we're entitled to. We hear about something being done before elections and then nothing happens. You know what? I just saw that one and decided to talk about it. I really think that you have captured the sentiment of a lot of folks that we have in not only in Texas, but around the country. And there are so many diverse organizations that are trying to get a piece of the pie here that it seems to be really slowing things down. But I think it's going to take congressional leadership to say, all right, everybody, we cannot get everybody on the same page on all of this, whether it's congressional members or other stakeholders or other groups or other public servant organizations or whatever, but we can get you all on the same page of getting rid of this arbitrary WEP. And the two best bills for that are the Richie Neal and the Kevin Brady bill. Let's start there. And so that's where our focus has been. I think that's where that's where the real congressional focus is today, on getting something done right now. If we had to really get something done today, the best chance of winning would be with the chairman of Ways and Means and the ranking member coming together and agreeing on getting this done. And if the Larson effort becomes something that starts taking off, doesn't mean that because we've already got some money in the pockets of our retirees and we've started a solution, it does not mean that we cannot come back and fix this. But what it does mean for our current retirees is that the longer that we do nothing, they get nothing. And so it is frustrating. And Kara, I think that you have hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of talk and not a lot of action. So again, y'all, there are a lot of comments. I'm just going to see if I can see some of these things that might be helpful for some. I appreciate all of the comments of people saying that they like this discussion, and I know it's taken a long time. For those of you who are going to watch it in the future, we're at 48 minutes into it. A couple of those minutes were us just waiting for people to log in. For our TRTA leaders, I just want you to know that we are going to continue to focus on this. For our legislative folks that are out there who are coordinating efforts, we are going to be organizing a lot of the call-ins, a lot of the email campaigns. We're going to be organizing ongoing discussions with our state and national partners. If you know somebody who lives in another state who is affected by the WEP and the GPO, please encourage them to take a look at this video. We want our national partners to be engaged. All of these congressional members that are signed on to these various bills, ask all of our folks to sign on to them. But let's ask Richie Neal, chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, to get together with Mr. Brady before he leaves Congress, and let's get something passed. We need to get something done on the WEP so that we can also get something done on the GPO. And y'all, I'm so grateful for your time and effort in working on this and continuing to put in your comments. But I just want to leave y'all with this. WEP is unnecessary. It's unfair. And it's time for it to go. We should not let this congressional cycle end with the existing WEP in place. A solution is in front of us. There are no excuses left. People who are representing you, they are the decision makers. They know that as long as the existing WEP is in place, thousands, hundreds of thousands of current retirees are losing benefits every month that we know they should never have lost to begin with. And the inaction by Congress to come together on a solution is the only thing preventing us from winning back the money for our teachers and our retirees and our school employees and our firefighters and our police officers and our other public servants back to their checking account, back into their pocketbooks. We have got to get this thing moving. And the excuses that we have heard in the past are just that. They're excuses. We need a bipartisan solution. That's what we're going to work on. That's what our members are calling for. And we're going to continue to do that. And we're going to work with all of the stakeholders and all the congressional members. And we want to see 2022 as the year that we win back the Social Security benefits that our members have earned. And with that, I bid you all a great Friday afternoon. Have a great holiday. Look forward to our efforts in 2022 and follow up inside lines about this. If you're not a member of TRTA, please consider joining. We'd love to have you as part of this fight. We need everybody involved, and we need to light up the phones and the emails and all of the work that is going to be necessary to bring a bipartisan solution together. So y'all have a great day. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I'll see y'all.